Good morning, everyone. It is Friday, July the 10th, 2020. It is currently 10:59 a.m. Central Time. Now, before I say anything else, I want to make this very clear. I'm about to cover a news story, and I'm going to place this in the column of developing. That means this news story is developing. We are going to need to get more information. I need to hear different perspectives, different explanations before I can be completely dogmatic. But from what I have in front of me right now, it doesn't look good. And from what I have in front of me right now, my reaction may be strong, but I am acknowledging right from the start that this is a developing story and I need more information. What is frustrating is obviously the story in front of me is going to deal with the Catholic Church because I'm doing this episode for the non-Catholic podcast, right, where I talk about all things related to Catholicism. So as soon as I saw this story and started trying to get some information, I'm like, okay, I'll go to Catholic news sources, right? So I listened to Vatican News this morning, coming to us from the Vatican. And guess what they did not report? They didn't report anything. They didn't even mention this story. So I'm going to have to continue to check some Catholic sources, some Catholic news sources, because I'm going, when I can find the audio, I'm assuming EWTN on the world over or EWTN Nightly News, one of them, I'm absolutely positive they will cover this story. And whenever I can get the audio of that and find it, and get their perspective, I will come back and do another episode to give the Catholic perspective. Because in this particular case, you're going to get my perspective, and I'm the non-Catholic Catholic. I'm sometimes referred to as a Catholic because of deciding to go to a Catholic university to get a degree in Catholic theology, even though I'm a Baptist pastor. So you're obviously going to get my perspective now, and I want to make this very clear. I'm probably going to say some things that many Catholics may feel is very harsh. You may feel it's unfair, but I want to make this very clear. I would have the exact same response if I read a story like this related to Protestant churches. And oh, by the way, there are some stories related to Protestant churches dealing with this very similar subject, and I will be covering that on the Theology Central podcast, probably coming up here in the next hour or so. I'll be live on the air for that podcast, talking about the same thing as it relates to Protestant churches. All right, so I don't care the name of the church. I don't care the name of the denomination. When it comes to money and the government, I have a very, 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 very strong, and I will say I try to be consistent in my stance. So I'm not here picking on the Catholic Church or bashing the Catholic Church just because I have some, agenda against Catholicism. No, I think this should bother everyone, no matter what church you attend. And I don't care what church. This is crazy. So here we go. I'm going to go through this information. I'm going to try to be fair. I'm going to try to be balanced. Again, this is a developing story, and I do want to hear the Catholic side. So for those who are Catholic, feel free to email me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Give me the Catholic perspective. Please, I beg you. Ask your priest. In fact, I'm going to get this information to a number of Catholic sources and Catholic individuals to see what they have to say, and I will come back and report their perspective. Because I want to be fair here. So I'm offering a warning because I may say some things that are going to be very blunt, and I don't want people to. I want you to have the broader context of where my what I'm saying and trying to be fair here and trying to be balanced, because the last thing I want to do is this just to be dismissed as, oh, he just hates the Catholic Church. I want this to really be a subject that we all need to discuss. All right, here we go. This comes to us from the Associated Press, posted 1 hour ago. Now that's why the Vatican News they haven't reported on it yet. I don't know at what time the latest episode of the Vatican News on my podcast feed. I don't know when it was uploaded, so maybe that's why. All right, but here it is. The Associated Press is reporting that the Catholic Church lobbied for taxpayer funds and got $1.4 billion. That's not million with an M. That's not thousand with a T. That's a billion with a B. The Catholic Church lobbied for taxpayer funds and got $1.4 billion. Now, forget the $1.4 billion for a second. The fact that any church would lobby for taxpayer funds is insane, and I will go so far to say it's wrong. The church should be supported solely by the giving of the members of that church. They should not be trying to get money from the government in any way, shape, or form. As a church, you have a tax-exempt status, right? And as a result of this, why are you trying to get taxpayer funds? Like, what are you doing? Like, we want separate, because look, and this is obvious. The more money you take, if you start taking money from the government, you start taking money from taxpayers, you're going to somehow become beholden to that government and to those taxpayers. And that's just no. The church, this has got just the headline has me already concerned. Like they lobbied for taxpayer funds. Why were they lobbying for taxpayer money? Why? Why should the taxpayers be given anything to a church? Like, no, the members of the church should. So what is going on? And they ended up with $1.4 billion. How can I'm sitting in my church in the middle of nowhere, Texas. How can I get $1.4 billion? How can I get $1.4 million? I mean, $1,000. I mean, a couple of $1,000, we could do all kinds of things. I wouldn't even know where to begin. That's just $1.4 billion. But maybe I'm misinterpreting the headline. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm coming across at it too negatively. Maybe I'm misunderstanding. It's always a possibility. You don't ever want to judge a news article by the headline. I understand that. So let me read the headline again. Catholic Church lobbied for taxpayer funds. They got $1.4 billion. All right. Maybe I'm misunderstanding something. So let's read. The United States Roman Catholic Church used a special and unprecedented exemption from federal rules to amass at least $1.4 billion in taxpayer-backed coronavirus aid, with many millions going to dioceses that have paid huge settlements or sought bankruptcy protection because of clergy sexual abuse cover-ups. So wait a minute. They found an unprecedented exemption from federal rules to amass $1.4 billion in taxpayer-backed coronavirus aid. Now, why should churches be getting any coronavirus aid? Why should they? They're not a business. Coronavirus aid should be going to businesses. Churches are not to operate as a business. We are not a business. We are supposed to be a ministry. And make this very clear. This is what I cannot stand about how many churches operate. Many churches say, we're a tax exempt, we're a ministry, we're a church. And then what do? They rent out their building so people can hold weddings there. That's a business. You're running a side hustle. Look, no. What is that? That shouldn't, or rent out your building for all kinds of other events. No. Why are you renting out your building? It's a church. It's a church. Use the church for what the church is called to do. Prayer, preaching, participating in the ordinances. Okay, that's what the church is there for, not all of this other nonsense. Some churches will have a coffee shop inside the building. Will have a bookstore. Many churches will run a daycare, right, from their church. They'll have their church building. They'll have a daycare center and then charge people large amounts of money. So That's not ministry. That's a business. You're running a business. There's a lot of things churches do that I think are questionable, especially considering they want a tax-exempt status. And I'll be honest with you, I think some churches should lose that tax-exempt status. I mean, if you want to be a business, just say we are a business. Just put there that this church is a for-profit business, and just do that. Just don't hide. Don't use deceit. Don't use trickery. And here's the coronavirus aid. Now, the coronavirus aid is supposed to help businesses, and somehow they found a loophole. They found an exemption. They found a way around it, and they amassed $1.4 billion. And this went to some of the dioceses that have filed bankruptcy because of all the sexual abuse situations. The church's hall may have reached, now this is great, listen to this. The church's hall may have reached or even exceeded $3.5 billion. $3.5 billion, making a global religious institution with more than 1 billion followers among the biggest winners in the U.S. government's pandemic relief efforts. So if this is true, the Catholic Church became the biggest winner in the U.S. government's pandemic relief effort. So the relief effort ended up going to the Catholic Church. Now, I'm a pastor of a small church in the middle of nowhere, and we get called. We don't get. I don't want to say all the time, but throughout our history, we get called a lot by people saying, "Can you pay my rent? Can you pay my electricity bill?" And in almost every case we have. And at one point, there's a woman who would come into the church, usually before church would start, and ask us for money to pay her electric bill. We would take her information. And the next thing we know, we kept paying her electric bill. And then the electric company, hey, you're being scammed, right? You're being scammed. And we found out that ultimately, I don't remember how it all worked, but we ended up paying for all kinds of people electric bill. I don't know if it was just we're paying for all of our friends. I don't know what we were doing, but we ended up getting scammed. I don't get mad that we got scammed. I mean, I get mad that people would walk into a church building and do that. But because my job is to try to help people. We've paid rent. We've tried to help people in every way possible. When I became a pastor, I said the one thing we're going to do is we're going to help people. Now, it sometimes blows my mind that people come to us, a little church in the middle of nowhere, and there's huge churches around us with thousands and thousands of, I don't even know how many members, and they, in many cases, those big churches don't help. Well, from now on, if someone comes to me, I'm going to go see your local Catholic parish and ask them, because they've got possibly $3.5 billion in the government's pandemic relief efforts. We didn't get a cent or a dime, nor would we ask for it. I mean, that's insane. So let me read this again. The church's hall may have reached or even exceeded $3.5 billion, making a global religious institution with more than 1 billion followers among the biggest winners in the U.S. government's pandemic relief efforts. An Associated Press analysis of federal data released this week found. Now, again, that is according to the Associated Press, and an analysis of federal data released this week found. Now, I have not seen that data, and I have not analyzed that data. So I will put a question mark here and say, if this is true, then this to me is this is messed up. This is wrong. There's just so many problems with it. Okay. Houses of worship, and faith-based organizations that promote religious beliefs aren't usually eligible for money from the U.S. Small Business Administration. Well, it shouldn't ever be, because that's a small business association, small business administration. The church isn't a business. It's a ministry, and it should not be operated as a business. Now, there is a business aspect to it because money comes in. But money is supposed to be there to cover expenses, cover certain things. It's a completely different world and environment. It's basically the way it works is, okay, you come to the church. Okay. Like in our church, we haven't passed an offering plate in I don't know how long. We have a basket here in the back, and I just say, after we're done singing and we get ready to greet, if you have an offering, place it in the back. And that's it. I don't beg, plead, nothing like that. And then that money goes to cover all of our whatever we're doing. If we're trying to help someone, it goes to cover that. It pays for the to keep the lights on. It pays for what I'm doing right here. Now, to be fair, sometimes the internet ministry is actually covered by people who listen and support us, but we don't even ask for money for that. It's a whole, I know for maybe someone who's not a Christian who hears this, you're like, you don't really understand how it all works, and it may seem all sketchy, and I definitely can understand that. Churches should be very transparent and open, and in a small church, you don't have that much money, so it's not really an issue. In a large churches, typically, they hand out like a financial statement. I don't know how often, and they'll give you how much money came in and where the money went to, and to give you some idea. That's why being a part of a local church, you know where your money goes. But I mean, it's not a business, and they should not be eligible, and they haven't been eligible for money from the U.S. Small Business Administration. But as the economy plummeted and jobless rates soared, Congress let faith groups and other nonprofits tap into the Paycheck Protection Program, a $659 billion fund created to keep Main Street open and Americans employed. So I guess technically, because my church, I don't really get a salary in the traditional way. They pay for my house payment, right? That's all I get. They pay for my house payment. And when I say that's all I get, make it very clear. I am eternally grateful for that, because by them doing that allows me to be a full-time pastor and then be able to do, I can do all the podcasts and all the things I can do. So I'm eternally grateful for that. But so I guess technically, then we should have been able to file for a paycheck protection program so that my church could continue to pay my house payment. Now, my church has been able to continue in the midst of this COVID-19 situation. But why would we turn to the government for that? Why would any church turn to the government for that? That's not the church should not be turning to the government for help. When our building got destroyed by a tornado, we didn't turn to the government for any assistance. It took us, 2 years? I think 2 years to get back into our building. Took forever, but we didn't ask the government for help. By aggressively promoting the payroll program and marshaling resources to help affiliates navigate its shifting rules, Catholic dioceses, parishes, schools, and other ministries have so far received approval for at least 3,500 forgivable loans, AP found. The Archdiocese of New York, for example, received 15 loans worth at least $28 million just for its top executive offices. Its iconic St. Patrick Cathedral on Fifth Avenue was approved for at least $1 million. In Orange County, California, where a sparkling glass cathedral estimated to cost over $70 million recently opened, diocesan officials working at the complex received 4 loans worth at least $3 million. So they get $3 million, even though they have a building worth $70 million. Yeah, okay. And elsewhere, a loan of at least $2 million went to the diocese covering Charleston, West Virginia, where a church investigation revealed last year that the then Bishop Michael Bransfield embezzled funds and made sexual advances towards young priests. Hey, but they got $2 million. Simply being eligible for low-interest loans was a new opportunity, but the church couldn't have been approved for so many loans, which the government will forgive if they are used for wages, rent, and utilities without a second break. All right, so simply being eligible for low-interest loans was a new opportunity, but the church couldn't have been approved for so many loans, which the government will forgive if they are used for wages, rent, utilities without a second break. Religious groups persuaded the Trump administration to free them from a rule that typically disqualifies an applicant with more than 500 workers. Without this preferential treatment, many Catholic dioceses would have been ineligible because between their head offices, parishes, and other affiliates, their employees exceeded the 500-person cap. So typically, if they had more than 500, they would have been exempt, but they were given basically preferential treatment, and there was a workaround. Now, this was not just to the Catholic Church. There are Protestant churches who did this as well, and it's just as wrong for them. Make this very clear. I'm against all of this. And what's messed up is we have the total number of employees at Victory Baptist Church of 1. That's me, okay? That's me. I'm the pastor. I'm the podcast producer. I'm the podcast host. I'm the internet guy. But to be fair, 2 of the teenagers in my church helped me with that. I'm everything. So we should have been able to qualify. But I still think and that's me drinking water, if you're wondering what that sound was. So I don't even know. I don't even know what to say. Let's continue reading here. The government grants special dispensation, and that creates a kind of structural favoritism, said Micah Schwartzman, a University of Virginia law professor specializing in constitutional issues and religion, who has studied the Paycheck Protection Program, and that favoritism was worth billions of dollars. The amount that the church collected between $1.4 billion and $3.5 billion is an undercount. The Diocesan Fiscal Management Conference, an organization of Catholic financial officers, surveyed members and reported that about 9,000 Catholic entities received loans. That is nearly 3 times the number of Catholic recipients the AP could identify. The AP couldn't find more Catholic beneficiaries because the government's data, released after pressure from Congress and a lawsuit from news outlets, including the AP, didn't name recipients of loans under $150,000, a category in which many smaller churches would fall. And because the government released only ranges of loan amounts, it wasn't possible to be more precise. So that means there may have been a lot of churches who got loans under $150,000, and they're not even being reported as churches. So that means a lot of small churches may have even gotten money. Even without a full accounting, AP's analysis places the Catholic Church among the major beneficiaries in the Paycheck Protection Program, which also helped companies backed by celebrities, billionaires, state governors, and members of Congress. This program was open to all religious groups, and many took advantage. Evangelical advisors to President Donald Trump, including his White House spiritual czar, Paula, I'm out of my mind, crazy White. Okay. Maybe that's not fair to say. Well, no, she is crazy. All right. Paula White, she also received loans. That is indeed. This stuff, I'm going to throw my iPad and I'm just going to go home. All right. There is no doubt that the state shelter-in-place orders disrupted houses of worship and businesses alike. Masses were canceled even during the Holy Week and Easter holidays, depriving parishes of expected revenue and contributing to layoffs in some dioceses. Some families of Catholic school students are struggling to make tuition payments, and the expense of disinfecting classrooms once classes resume will put additional pressure on budgets. Well, let me make this very clear. This is very important. Guess what? If you're a church and you decide to have a school, it's your responsibility to fund it. It's your responsibility to take care of it. And another thing that drives me crazy about churches is they want to open a school and then charge people crazy amounts of money to be able to send their kids there because you're trying to, help them stay out of the failing public school system. Well, then let them in for free and the church supports the cost. And if the church can't support it, then the church shouldn't have the ministry. Like we want to have daycare centers to help single moms be able to, go to work and try to help them, improve their lives financially. But then we're going to take, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars them per week so their kids can go to the church daycare. No, church daycare should be free. Should be a ministry of the church. And then the church should pay the workers there. Man, this whole thing is just crazy. But other problems were self-inflicted. Long before the pandemic, scores of dioceses faced increasing financial pressure because of a dramatic rise in recent clergy sex abuse claims. The scandals that erupted, and they talk about how all these churches were having major financial issues because of all of these cases. All right. And the story goes on. This is what I will do. I will post this entire story. I will post the entire story on the theologycentral.net blog. Theologycentral.net. If you that's our pod page for the Theology Central podcast, but I can use the blog for anything. So go to theologycentral.net, theologycentral.net. Go to the blog section. You can read the entire report from the Associated Press. Now, they're going to definitely focus on, hey, these dioceses were in trouble because of this sex abuse scandal. They were paying out all of this money. They were on the brink of bankruptcy. And so then they went in, they took advantage of the situation to get all of this money. Okay. Look, I don't care if they were in any financial problem. I'm not here to talk about the sex abuse scandal. I mean, that was a travesty. That was a crime. That was horrible. That was wrong. My issue is, why is the church going to the government to get money, take that money that could be going to businesses, become possibly one of the major, one of the organizations that was one of the major benefit. They benefited maybe the most. Okay, in fact, I'm going to read the exact quote from the Associated Press because I don't want to put words in their mouth. See here. The church's haul, making them the biggest winner in the U.S. government's pandemic relief efforts. So the biggest winner, that's the word they use. They benefited the most from this. And that's just like the church taking that. That's just no. Is the church going to be going into the community now looking for all the people who are hurting financially and be helping all of those people? Are you going to go, if there's a business close to your parish and you're like, man, that business is about to go under, you're going to walk across the street, Mr. Priest, and say, hey, we benefited greatly from this, with the program that the government had to give relief for the pandemic situation, and we got a lot of money, so we're gonna give you some money to keep your business afloat. No, are they going to do that? This whole thing is messed up. The whole thing is it's wrong on so many levels. Now, some will argue, well, wait a minute. The government gave them the ability to do that. It was okay. I didn't say it was illegal. I said it was messed up. I believe this is wrong from a biblical perspective. We should not be taking taxpayers' money to fund our churches. Taxpayers shouldn't have to pay for our churches. Taxpayers shouldn't be the one trying to keep our churches open. It's the church members' responsibility. We don't turn to the government. We don't do that. Now, I know what some will say, well, some of those church members are taxpayers. I understand that. It's not the way it should work. The church should support itself. All right? It's very important. And I just want to remind you, when you look at the billions and billions and billions, I mean, you're talking, 3.5 billion. I mean, we don't even know exactly how much total that they ended up getting. You're talking billions and billions and billions of dollars. When your church needs that much money, there's an issue. Let me just go through some scriptures here that you probably should know, because I think this is very important. All right. I think this is very important. Where do we want to go? Let's go to Hebrews chapter 13. I've got a lot here that we could look at. We'll go to just a few, just to remind us. Hebrews chapter 13. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 5 reads, let your conversation, or let your manner of life, be without covetousness, without greed, without covetousness. Some translations state it this way: keep your lives free from the love of money. and be content with what you have, because God has said, never will I leave you, never will I forsake you. Okay, covetousness, greed. When you're sitting there like, oh, there's this program that's supposed to help all of these people. We've got to get some of that. All right, let's do so. Now, the Catholic Church has all kinds of people who are probably good at filling, they got lawyers, they've got all kinds of people who can probably sit down and spend all the time necessary to fill out all of that paperwork, and they were able to work the system and got the money. Now, they're not the only one. Big mega evangelical churches did the same thing. They turned to government. This is just, there should be a separation here. The church should support itself. It's the way it should work. Luke chapter 12. That's one more. And I've got a list of scriptures here we could go through. I'm not going to go through all of them, but just give you the basic idea of the way the Bible states this. At one time, this is Luke chapter 12. I've set the scene. Jesus has been teaching. He's been teaching on some very important concepts, and all of a sudden, someone in the crowd, as Jesus is teaching, someone in the crowd says, "Hey, Master, speak to my brother that he divide the inheritance with me." All right, look, Jesus, you're teaching all these spiritual truths. I need some practical help here. Talk to my brother and make sure he divides the inheritance with me. I want what's mine. I want my money, right? I want my property. And he said unto him, "Man, who made me a judge or a divider over you?" And he said unto them, "Take heed and beware of covetousness, for a man's life consisteth not in the abundance of the things which he possesseth." Life is not about that. But no. The Catholic Church needed some money. They found a way to get some money. And that's going to the government. When the government had a program to try to help businesses stay afloat during COVID-19 pandemic. But no. The church needed some of that money because the church needed to stay open. And I've stated this countless times. I'm going to state it again. Many of the churches who have disobeyed the rules to close down during COVID-19 flaunted those rules, said we're not going to follow those rules. We're going to meet in person. Many of them did that. And don't tell me they didn't. And I'm going to stand by this. They did it for financial considerations. They needed the people there so they could give money. Many of the churches who did that crazy, drive up church service where everyone pulled into the parking lot and then you either stood in the parking lot to preach to all the people in the car and you broadcast your sermon via like an FM transmitter, like this weird, like, what is that? Everybody sitting in their car? Like, what are you trying to, like, are you trying to make a point? No. And then I found out what happened in many of those drive-up services. Now, I had multiple people email me who did confirm this as far as their church is concerned. I can't say this happened in all 100. But I saw video and images. Guess what? Get all those people to pull in the parking lot. I don't know why they can't just sit at home and listen. They're listening over their car radio. What is even the point? I don't even get it. Some cases, the pastor wasn't even in the parking lot. He was inside the building broadcasting over everyone's, a small FM transmitter. I don't even know why they can't just sit at home and listen. But no, you get them to pull up in the parking lot. And then guess what? I saw over and over and over. Someone going to car to car to car with a basket to get what? Money. Greed, covetousness. Man, I just don't get it. I don't get it. So I'm going to stand on the Bible demonstrates the way the church is to be supported is by the giving of the people. That's how it's to be done. And that's the way it should be done. And if someone's not a member of a church, but they listen to that church online, they benefit from it, and they want to help support that, they can. They can do that on their own. But I don't think there should be giving, begging, pleading, manipulating. There shouldn't be any of that. There shouldn't be commercials on your podcast. I don't monetize my podcast in no way, shape, or form. I would never monetize. I would not. Now, if I created a podcast about music or created a podcast about professional wrestling, and I really wanted to put all my effort into doing that and hopefully building a good podcast and getting a good crowd, I could monetize that, because that's not a part of the church. It wouldn't be a ministry of the church. Our podcast or ministry is a Victory Baptist Church. This is our attempt to be able to talk about things from a religious, theological perspective, to try to challenge people to think from a biblical perspective, to try to feed people spiritually, to try to teach people. And we don't want your money. We want your time and listening. That's what we want. Man, this is just some messed up. It's messed up. It's messed up. It's messed up. And again, this did not just happen on the Catholic side. This happened on the evangelical side as well. But I wanted to report this since this is specifically about the Catholic Church, and the Catholic Church possibly is the biggest winner in the entire program. That means most likely the Catholic Church probably exceeded by far what the Protestant churches got. And I will argue possibly the reason why is because the Catholic Church probably had a structure in place that would easily able to navigate the government requirements and the paperwork and submitting it. They probably had a far better structure in place to pull that off. Maybe you've got some large Protestant denominations who should have been able to pull off the same thing. It'll be interesting to see how many Protestant denominations find out. I mean, if your church, I hate to say this, I'm not going to speak. Since this is for the Catholic podcast, I would say this: if your diocese did that, how do you justify that from a biblical standpoint? I mean, really? Hey, if the government's giving you the money, I guess the government should start telling you what you can and can't do and what you can preach and what you can't preach, right? I mean, if you're going to take the government's money, why don't you take the government's rules? When the government wants to step in and say, you can't preach that, that's hate speech. You can't preach that, that's wrong. You can't preach that against homosexuality. Don't start whining and crying. You're taking their money. Take their money, you take their rules. You take their control. Man. All right, I'll stop right there. Yeah, I'm still trying. Again, it's a developing story. More information to come. Maybe I'll hear an explanation I'm never going to hear an explanation, because I would never take the government's money that way. I would not do that. Would not do that in any way, shape, or form. Right? That's just no. I'd say that's a negative thing. Now, yeah, there's some other questions that could come up there, but I think this whole thing, and again, I'm standing against it on the Protestant side and the Catholic side. This is not a Catholic issue. This is, to me, churches who are, to me, violating their biblical principles, turning, in a sense, using biblical terminology, turning to Caesar to help them, turning to the world, turning to government, turning to taxpayers to fund them, to keep them open, to pay salaries, turning to the government to fund the church. And that's never been the way it works. The saints come together, the saints give freely, joyfully, hopefully, to give, and then that money should go specifically to the ministry. And you should not be operating as a business in any way, shape, or form. All right, I'll stop right there. I'm sure that I'm going to have some Catholic somewhere trying to argue against me here. Just make sure you understand. You can defend it, but I'm going to speak against this for the Protestant side and the Catholic side. This has nothing to do with the name of the denomination, the name of the church. This is about a very important principle. All right, I'll stop right there. Thanks for listening. You can email me all of your hate, your anger, your whatever you want to. You can come after me at newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com, newsif@yahoo.com. Yeah, now I'm kind of scared. I'm kind of scared. So, all right. We'll see what happens. God bless.